everyone who's here. Now that we know you can hear us. I'm Emily. I am the marketing director here at GoWP, and I'd like to welcome everyone here today for this panel discussion with some truly awesome panelists who I will introduce in just a minute. First, though, I would just like to say a couple of quick words about GoWP. So as a part of the GoWP community, I assume most of you here are agency professionals. If you want, you can let me know in the chat if I'm on or off target with that. And if you're not an agency professional, I'd love to know what it is you do in the WordPress community, and that might help out with our conversation today as well. So at GoWP, we have a team of happiness engineers who help agencies succeed and grow by providing exceptional maintenance and support for their clients. What we do is partner with agencies by taking the high-touch, low-value work that disrupts your day off your plate. Those things like plugin updates, backups, security scans, cleanup, all that kind of stuff. We take care of that for you. And we're white label, so we do it under your brand. This way you have time to focus on the low-touch, high-value work that helps your agency grow and become more scalable. So if you have any questions about partnering with GoWP and how we can help you and your agency, feel free to email me or check out our website, GoWP.com. My email is emily@GoWP.com. And I also really quick wanted to tell you about our Facebook group, which is GoWP Niche Agency Owners. It's a community of agency professionals who either already serve a niche market or are looking to niche down. This discussion, this recording will be available there afterward as well to watch, so go check it out, and I hope you'll join us there too. So on to the rest as I, okay. So why we're here today. This event was born out of a discussion between GoWP and WP&UP when we were trying to figure out a way to work together to help spread the mission of WP&UP. They're doing really great work, and if you haven't already checked them out, please do. We'll be talking a lot about that today. And as those of you here today know, being part of the WordPress community a lot of times means working alone, whether it's part of a remote team, as a solopreneur, as a contract worker, whatever it is. And if you know that it can get lonely. So it's important that we talk about this and that you know that there are resources out there to help. So today, this is going to be an informal discussion, and I really encourage you to use the chat if you'd like to comment or ask a question to anyone on the panel, and I'll keep an eye on that. So first, I'd like to introduce Dan Mabey, the CEO and trustee of WP&UP. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Emily. Thank you. First off, just thank you so much to yourself and to GoWP for enabling us to have this conversation. It's really good to be able to talk about mental health within our community. So just a quick bit for myself. I'm actually an agency owner myself. Blue 37. We've been running for several years now. I've been in the WordPress space for over a decade now. As you mentioned, founder of WP&UP, really born out of my own personal experiences as a solo business owner and the challenges that I faced trying to build my agency within the space. So WP&UP has a mission to support and promote positive mental health within the WordPress community. So as I said, really appreciate the opportunity to come on and have a chat.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really happy to be able to bring this conversation out as well. So thank you for that. Next, I'll introduce Picha Neri. She is a UX and design consultancy owner and also a very big presence in the WordPress community. So Picha.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having us. So yes, I have been a designer for a long time, and then since I started working with WordPress, I actually got much more into the user experience side of things because that's more suited to digital products. And mostly I do workshops and courses and speak internationally. And I used to live in London for a long time. And then I moved to Spain 3 years ago. And that's where I really realized what working remotely meant and how if you move, you lose the friends that you had where you were. Therefore, it becomes really important to have a support network. And WP&UP provides that, and I am hugely grateful to them. And also to WordPress, because the first people that I met here in Spain, where I didn't know anyone when I moved, were the WordPress community. And I've just been, I'm now one of the organizers of Work in Valencia. So it's a godsend, really.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. It's been the same for me since moving to Atlanta, and WordPress is a really big community here. So it's great to have that. Next, let's go ahead and introduce Nathan Wrigley, podcaster extraordinaire for WP&UP and WP Builds. Nathan?
Hi, yeah, my name's Nathan Wrigley. I live in the UK, and I've only been working with WordPress probably for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was using platforms like Drupal and Magento, and moved over to WordPress and kind of quickly for me at least anyway, got kind of stuck into the community and decided to put a podcast together and those kind of things. And then I don't exactly remember where I met Dan, but I have a memory of meeting him maybe at WordCamp London or something, and then in a car park during a meeting in his Essex meetup. No, it was the Suffolk meetup, I believe. That's right, wasn't it? And yeah, so I run a small agency based in the north of England, but I think really my focus is turning more and more to content creation. Primarily at my podcast, WP Builds, but also for WP&UP. We produce a weekly podcast trying to touch on some of the issues that WP&UP is trying to help fix.
Yeah, and that's a great resource right there. I know that a lot of people, even prior to this starting, when we were first publicizing it, people have commented to me like, make sure you share resources on where we can go afterward, so the podcast is a great thing to bring up. So then next we've got Alex. Alex is a partnership advocate for WP&UP, and it's really thanks to him that we're having this discussion on this platform today. He brought us WP&UP and GoWP together, so thanks for that, Alex.
You're welcome.
And welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So I've known Brad for a few years, and I just recently joined the team at WP&UP. Basically after Nathan did an amazing interview with me. So I had seen it online, and I have a really colorful past for mental health and just life experience over the past decade, and that's what I shared on the podcast. And after I found out more of what WP&UP was doing, I wanted to get more involved, serve and volunteer. So Nathan invited me to the Slack channel and got me connected with Dan, and then the conversation just kind of blossomed from there. Using the years I've been in the WordPress community and worked for several WordPress companies, it was just a pretty good fit to kind of bring me on to help with the partnership outreach, and I love it. I just spoke this last weekend at Dallas Fort Worth in Texas on imposter syndrome, and then I'm also on the organizing team for rebooting WordCamp Houston after it's been dormant for 10 years. So I'm pretty excited about next spring. Just a lot going on. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. That's exciting. Way to go.
Thanks.
Okay, great. So let's dive into the questions. The first one we have here, and also I want to reiterate that if you have questions, feel free to put them up in the chat or send them via the Q&A, and we can get to those as well. And hello to everybody that's been saying hi in the chat. We see you, so thanks for being here. Okay, so first question, and this is kind of the broader topic of the whole thing, but how do you deal with isolation when working remotely? And Pecha, I'll throw this one to you first, since you've already kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yes, that was a real shocker for me, because you would have thought that I would have, sort of thought about it before I moved to Spain, where I didn't know anyone, but I hadn't thought about it. So when I lived in London, having a studio outside my home was just a given. I would just have it. It wouldn't occur to me to not have it, just because of the way London is. But here, I don't know why, I just didn't do it. I never found the right co-working space to join. So it's been really tough, to be honest. It's been tough. There's already a question in the Q&A from Rolando, who's saying, are there online communities for remote workers to meet on a weekly or daily basis for lunch or whatever else? yeah, and we can give, you can always organize it, but you know, there are things that you can do, because that's what I've been doing. I have so many accountability meetings, or any kind of meeting that I hear about that happens, I jump in all the time, because really the ability to connect to other people is on video helps hugely get through the day. And what you can do is also things like set up a work Zoom room with friends and just say, look, this is a Zoom room. It will be open for 4 hours on Wednesday morning. Feel free to join, and we'll just literally, you're just working there and occasionally saying something, and that's all that you do. So this is one way of dealing with it. Then I think that also joining a co-working space doesn't suit me in the long run or on a permanent basis because of things like this. So if suddenly I have a webinar, or I have to record a course, because I'm doing a lot of that, or Nathan with his podcast, and I've been podcasting a little bit. I started, then I dropped it. But anyway, you need an environment that a co-working space is not apt to doing this kind of thing, to doing video and so on. So that's made it a bit harder. But now I'm trying to go out when I can, just spend a day, just do without the good mic and the big screen, and spend a day in a cafe a week. Because I don't know about other people, but what happens to me is that I then get really, really lazy. So the less I go out, the less I want to go out. And I'm pretty active and quite sporty and so on, but I can just, literally not leave the house for days. If I've got provisions, it's, and there isn't anything in particular that I'm asked to do. Also, like I said, I of course now I have friends and I have networks, and I have, my WordPress family, and we've just done WordCamp, so we feel like a family right now, because everyone who's been through it knows how, big a deal it is. But so I have fewer social obligations and contacts than I used to have in London. Therefore, I have to make a real effort to go out sometimes, but it needs to be made. It's got to be done. You've got to go out and make sure that you do sports that force you to go out, which luckily most of my sports are like that. But so this is just a few strategies that you can use.
Yeah, I think those are all really great tips. And especially with sports too, that opens up a whole nother world of groups and online communities that you can join and open up communication with. Does anyone else have anything to add here?
Yeah, the isolation that we can face is huge as an industry. We're made up of an industry made up of freelancers, solo business owners, distributed team members. It's a real challenge, this issue. And the WordPress community is pretty good at meetups and WordCamps and these events, bringing people together. And I just strongly encourage anybody to get involved in those kinds of events in any way they can. Volunteer at a WordCamp. If there isn't a meetup in your local area, get one started. And if that feels quite daunting, then we're more than happy within WP&UP to support individuals through that process. We run multiple meetups ourselves, and very happy to support individuals to get a meetup up and running in the local community if there isn't one already. It's an important way of bringing the community together by having those in-person events.
Definitely. And Nathan and Alex, did you have anything you wanted to pitch in here, or we can move on to the next?
I was just going to say that bizarrely, the internet is also a great place to find solace away from the internet, oddly enough, in that I've managed to find myself in countless WordPress related, so let's just keep it at that level, maybe Facebook groups and Slack channels and things like that, and I've made honest to goodness, real, actual friendships simply by typing out text and posting silly pictures of cats and things like that. But I spend an inordinate amount of time doing that, and it's borne a lot of fruit. I've met these people in the real world many times subsequently. So for me, that was a great step. I didn't communicate. I didn't use those platforms at all. I was fairly isolated socially. I mean, I still don't use Twitter particularly and things like that, but found myself in Facebook, found the right groups for me. And that really worked. I found that to be most useful. And then I would urge anybody who has, wants to explore this further to join the WP&UP Slack channel. I'm not entirely sure. Dan can probably give us the correct URL to join that, but that's really thriving, really engaging, and very, very friendly. And things get raised in there that you might not wish to put on places like Facebook. It's a little bit more catering to the type of things that we'll maybe touch on later.
Great. Yeah. And Dan shared that to the chat right now. So
yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dan.
WP&UP.org/Slack if you want to come and join us. So we run a number of things within there. We've got our life groups, which are smaller, more intimate groups, which meet on a regular basis. We've got a number of initiatives that happen within that enable people to come together and continue these conversations.
That's huge help, by the way, to me as well, was the Slack channel as well as Facebook. But yeah.
It's a real 24/7 affair as well, in that there's people in there, because the WP&UP seems to be becoming a global thing. I've posted it all times of the day, and there's usually a nice reply coming in fairly quickly.
Yeah.
fantastic.
And can I just say, just in case people miss the chat, Leo Mindo said that for those on UKWP Community Slack, there's a weekly Zoom chat on Tuesday lunchtime in the remote channel. And that's great, because so it's something else that people can do.
Yeah, and I will try also, once we're done here, to kind of round up all of these links that we're sharing today and send those out to everyone who's registered here today. So don't worry about scribbling them all down now. So yeah, Alex, did you have anything?
Yeah, so for me, my wife and I moved out to Houston a little over 4 years ago. And I was working remote at the time, and then did a job change to an office. Ironically, I actually missed working remote, being around all those people. But I found myself, when I went back to remote work, I had a hard time of wanting to reach out to people. And so I think it's good to remember, we always, a lot of people, not just WP&UP, we use, you are not alone, but it really is true that there are people out there that are just struggling. And then you think that you're in this bubble of pain or suffering and there's no hope, or, just even this morning. So I suffer from anxiety and depression and take medicine for it. But even just this morning in the shower, I just felt kind of, and it took me a few hours just to kind of get out of that and convince myself like there's nothing to be afraid of. And then it was fine. So I think that really remembering, if you're by yourself and you don't have either people living with you, or if you're moving in a new place, that things are going to be okay. It just takes time and patience, and just, you will find that strength or encouragement from something or someone to come alongside you. And so I think that is a really big part of why Dan started this, is to just give us that reminder that there are other people out there just like us.
Definitely. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. There's this one, and I'll just throw it out there. So what is the biggest challenge you face as a solo business owner? And who wants to start with this one?
Well, for me personally, it was isolation.
Isolation,
It was the fact that I was just spending too much time in my own head. I didn't have somebody there just to bounce ideas back and forth. I was in my office. There was nobody else around me, and when you're in a traditional work environment, you've often got work colleagues around you. You verbalize things. You process things without even realizing you're doing it, because you've got other people around you to talk to. And being in that situation where you're just isolated all day long, unfortunately, I wasn't in a situation that enabled me to be in a co-working space, and it just meant that I was continually on my own, and that isolation was a real challenge for me. Hence the development of WP&UP. But there are many other challenges as well. I don't want to kind of belittle any of the other. I mean, there are some big challenges around marketing, some big challenges around service development, pricing. There's many issues that we come up against, and a lot of those conversations we see within WP&UP, people talking and asking and speaking about such a wide range of challenges in relation to working on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, it was all about the isolation.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, does anyone have aside from isolation, any other kind of, if we're staying on the topic of mental health, what else maybe?
I think that isolation kind of encompasses everything in a way, because I mean, to me, it's also everything that Dan said, plus on top of that, the fact that I distort things. You're left on your own interpreting facts or silences, or someone not replying to an email, and you just don't have the necessary detachment to give it less importance than they have. So when you're able to chat with people, or have banter and laugh a little bit because you have lunch with someone who's funny in your office, then they would say, yeah, but don't worry about that, I know that person, they're not, they don't mean that. Do you know what I mean? So there's hundreds of little daily triggers that I think that are amplified by isolation, and I personally really struggle with that. And that's, I think, I could tell you, marketing, finding clients remotely for me has been a huge challenge, because it was always referral, and then suddenly you're like, oh, if people don't see me because I don't live in their city anymore, they don't refer. So to me, it was like, fancy that. I had never sort of thought about it. But again, that's isolation. So I think in a way, isolation is the fundamental problem that all problems come from. And this is a UX principle that I just told you, but that's a different story. Yeah.
And Melanie brought up in the chat, and this is a big one. And Alex, I saw you responded, so maybe you can take on this one, but imposter
syndrome.
Man, yeah, so
huge.
My talk at Dallas Fort Worth was about this. Something I didn't talk about in that speech was the desire to be accepted. For me, it goes outside of just work. Right now, I'm actually just in the middle of working on myself and trying to identify better ways to control of when to let things go and when to pursue them in a healthy way, rather than replying with a specific attitude or jumping to conclusions. So for me, that's something I'm working on, and because we can, when we're isolated, but even when we're around people, there's that need to feel like accepted or want to fix the relationship. And this is something that I also struggle with, of wanting everything to be okay. If say another person and I had a disagreement, well, there could be a wave of guilt that washes over me. And even though it's still tense, my reaction in my mind is to, oh, are we okay? Are we still good again? And so it's like, you have to really be cautious, because everything starts up in your mind, and it can, flush out, trigger you to do impulsive things, make what you're thinking into a reality and make a mistake. And so it's really hard, and you have to be really careful of trying to be too needy in certain situations. So that's something outside of isolation that I struggle with too.
Yeah, and I think it's a really big topic, because I remember when I went to WordCamp US last year, I had just been involved in the WordPress community for 3 months at that point. And as you all know, it's a super friendly community, right? But me, being new to it, I assumed everybody was already best friends there. So I was like, oh, I'm an outsider. I'm not best friends with anybody. And that's where, you get that anxiety. You start thinking, I'm on the outside. How do I get on the inside? All of those kinds of feelings that stem from that. So yeah, it's true that WordPress is super friendly, but that's just where that imposter syndrome can kind of make you a little delusional, right? On what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be really very, very debilitating. It really is something that we need to be aware of and find ways to try and overcome, not necessarily overcome. I think it's actually important to recognize that imposter syndrome can, in some degrees, be positive. Actually questioning ourselves, if we just continue on going through life and not recognizing and asking, well, actually, is that right? Or should I, having those questions about ourselves, and that can be equally as unhealthy. So it's one of those things that we need to not try and remove from our life. We do need to have a level of it to ensure that we are living a healthy life.
It is said that it says that imposter syndrome is a sign of intelligence, because it basically means that you understand that you should know more and you constantly strive to improve yourself. So that's, that is a good sign. That I can think of people who definitely don't have imposter syndrome and should have it. So that's another one. So yeah, it's a good one.
I recently wrote a letter to my imposter syndrome, and it was actually
Yeah.
quite cathartic, that process of just going through it and recognizing that actually, you know what, I'm always going to have that. It's always going to be there, but there are ways of managing it. There are ways of dealing with those feelings and emotions.
Is that a private thing, or is that something you published?
No, I've actually put the link in the chat there. It's actually
great. I didn't see it. Okay.
WP&UP.org/imposter.
Fantastic.
And I turned it into a WordCamp talk. It was something that they felt that could be shared with the community.
Very good. Nice. Okay, switching gears a little bit here. Let's talk about kind of more work-related stuff. So client expectations, that is something that can create a lot of stress, anxiety, all of the above, right? So how do you all handle that? And what kind of triggers does it give you, I guess, if you want to talk about that as well? Maybe who wants to start here? Dan, you look ready to go.
It's setting expectations and actually making sure we set them from the outset. It's so easy to get into a situation with clients where their expectations are here and your expectations are here, and they just don't align. So making sure that you're setting out how you communicate, setting out what the expectations of the project, etc. are. We actually deliver essentially an infographic to our clients at very, very, very early stage within the projects that give a visual representation of our expectation from them on the project, and making sure that they have an understanding that this isn't just something they're handing over to us. This is a two-way relationship. They've got to be part of this process, and putting it into that visual representation, we found they just seem to get it. They seem to understand that actually there's a big bubble over here which represents them, and there's this big bubble over here which represents us, and both the bubbles change in size as you move through the project. Because there are times where they've got to invest more time into it, and obviously the times when we do. So it's that for us has worked really, really well in terms of setting out those expectations from the from the get-go with the clients.
Yeah, and we've got in the chat somebody saying that it seems like sometimes when people know you work remote, people oftentimes expect you to dedicate all of your time to them then maybe, right? So we're setting those expectations is really important.
I think it's really important to, especially in light of what we've just been talking about, the amount of time that we work and things like that. I think it's important to tell them when your phone is on and when your phone is off. So in my case, one of the expectations that I have is that I will refuse to pick up the phone at 7 p.m. because that's just out of bounds. My process is not as complicated as Dan's, but it basically boils down to the same thing, and client expectations, making sure that in the literature somewhere before a project begins. In my case, I hone it down to it has to be an individual. I will only, this is not quite the same, but I won't refuse to, but I highly, strongly recommend that I'm probably only going to deal with one person at that company. And so that person is the conduit for everything, and all of the infighting and everything that's going on about the project within their organization can happen behind the firewall of that one person. And then I just get to communicate with them. And hopefully build up a relationship with them, a personal relationship, because you get to speak to them multiple times. And my personal preference is the telephone, as much as possible, to use the actual phone and speak to them. I'm not really into using the email and all of those things. If I can sum things up in 1 minute on a phone call, I'll do it that way rather than a 15-minute tennis match on email.
You're right,
Yeah.
and yet I hate the phone with a passion.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I'm lucky in that I do not mind picking up the phone to complete strangers and talking. I'm not necessarily always that comfortable, but I'm not too fussy about doing it. I'm okay with that.
It's because of your wonderful DJ voice, Nathan. Everybody wants to hear it.
Well, for me, it's proven to be the most fruitful way of diffusing things. I found, I arrived at this decision. It didn't just occur to me one day. Things got lost in emails, or the tenor of an email and the tone used in an email, I'm absolutely misinterpreted, and exactly the opposite. They misinterpreted something that I thought was supposed to be humorous or what have you, and they took offense to it, and so things get out of hand. And I found that can, in my way, can be placated with a quick phone call. So it's not for everybody, but it works for me. And dealing with just that one person, I found, is enormously helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's true that, like Peter was saying, like sometimes when the phone rings, it automatically is like, what's wrong? What's the anxiety, right? Or something like that. But oftentimes, I mean, the majority of the times that's not the case. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the telephone call, I presume in this, where you are, it's the same. The telephone displays the number of the caller, and that can really ruin your day. Just see the person's name on the screen. Got to get over that, I think. And in my case, it's okay. Yeah, just pick up the phone.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, those are that's a really good perspective there.
Yeah.
On that note, are there any particular conversations that impact you either negatively or positively with clients that you can think of?
I always find talking about money difficult, and therefore I have learned to make it the first thing that gets dealt with so that it's done. And I think that the best way to do that is to demand that they give you a budget. We've had this conversation with Dan quite a few times, because WP&UP, as Dan was saying earlier, also help with business. You can go to them with business issues that cause you anxiety, and they will help. So to me, that's a difficult conversation. Once that's done, I think that everything else is, well, there are other difficult things, but to me, that's the one.
Don't you just love one of those, the clients that think they're designers, and actually that challenge of you're being hired, your company's being hired because you are a professional. You're professional at what you do, and suddenly these individuals that aren't professionals within this area of expertise think they are, and those conversations can be quite challenging. I've had many of them with companies that have hired us, and they feel that their project manager or their CFO or whoever happens to be in the room at that time, they know the best. They know about design, they know about UX, they know about UI, and some decisions that they've tried to impart and encourage upon us have led to interesting conversations. And there are times we need to be strong and need to stand your ground and realize that you are the professional in the room. You are doing this. This is your area of expertise, and this isn't their area of expertise. They of course they have opinions, and of course they're clients, and you need to listen and take feedback from them. But sometimes we need a slider, and it needs to be full width, and it needs to have 78 slides across it. Those conversations can be quite challenging sometimes, and just educating our clients, educating them in the process, and educating them in the needs of their business, really.
Yeah, I'm gonna side with Dan on education. I think I've worked with a client where they did not want to do any collaboration with our agency outside of a Zoom video meeting. And during wireframe and design, this was very difficult because we would give them tasks or, request collaboration outside of email or the meeting, and they just didn't want to do it. And so it just delayed the project and caused a lot of friction. I had anxiety, it was shot up. And so client education is so, so important. So the earlier you do it, the better.
I'm always really startled by the lengths that I will go to explain something and how much I fail at explaining that thing. I really feel I'm doing a tremendous job and I've spelled it out really well, and yet, but then I take the, when I visit my local mechanic because my car has gone wrong, and my local mechanic carefully explains how my car works, and all the time I'm looking at him, but I'm literally thinking, I have no idea what he's talking about. And then smile and nod and say yes several times during the conversation. And then clearly, if he was to ask me a week later to describe that conversation, I would just, I don't know. I have nothing to say about that. So I think it's the same. Maybe we're in a technical area. It's so common sense to us. I don't have the answer to this other than just being patient and trying to explain it over and over again, but setting those expectations and delivering it in a way that works. I know, for example, that when my children are at school, there's a whole raft of pedagogy about the way to communicate with the children. This child seems to work very well visually. This child has an incredible capability to listen to information, but not necessarily take it in through the eyes. And so I'm sure there's a bit of that, but I don't necessarily have the time to figure out my clients on that psychological level. I just phone them up or write them emails.
Beth raises a really interesting point in the chat there, actually, about establishing distinct roles within the contract. It's really really interesting to try and take that approach with clients.
That's brilliant. That's very clever.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peacha, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that with the mechanic, what I do is like, yeah, you do it. I don't want to know it because I don't understand it. But the problem is the clients that don't take that for an answer and want to, and those are the difficult clients. But, I'm delighted and I don't really understand that, because if I were them, I'd be like, yeah, please do it. So they're difficult.
Yeah.
Leo's picked up sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we had one question come in regarding about billing, the other conversation that can create a lot of anxiety for some people. And that is that a client concern could be that remote workers may overbill them if they're being billed hourly, right? So the question is, what about moving more to value-based pricing or weekly rates? And that way you're positioned as consultants or solution providers instead of contractors or freelancers. I don't know if any of y'all have any perspective on this.
Yes, I think it's a very good perspective. It's hard sometimes. I find that there are certain jobs where working by the hour may be convenient, because I had a client that would understand value-based because they were so nitpicking. I was like, right, you charge by the hour because you need to pay if you make me do things a million times. But otherwise, value-based pricing, I think, is what all the big boys are doing, isn't it, Dan? Would you agree?
Challenging. It's a really challenging model.
Hard.
Because you can get it so wrong, and if you get it wrong, you get it really wrong when it comes to value-based pricing.
Yeah, it's scary.
But if you get it right, it's a fantastic model, and it's one of these that does come with high risk, but it's worth learning. It's whether you've got the opportunity to learn and go through that process. I mean, it ultimately it keeps coming back to value and the value that we deliver for our clients. I mean, Leo picks up a really interesting point there about the perceived value that we're delivering. And obviously, when we come back to talking about value-based pricing, we're obviously that's got to be sent up front and center in terms of the conversation. And our industry is shifting. Our industry is changing from simply being able to design and develop a website into a much broader requirement. There's a real need to incorporate so many more services into what we're doing. I think we're the traditional web design and development agency. How much longer are we going to see that? I don't know. I think there's definitely, we've got to embrace the change and embrace the way that the market has shifted to be able to deliver value to our clients.
Definitely. Beth asked if we think Wix and Squarespace and other 1 hour builders set that expectation, that it's not all that hard to do what you do.
I mean, I expect that none of us work with people that consider Wix and Squarespace a solution, really, because that no, it's true. I mean, they definitely, I think that there is an element of that for sure, absolutely. But at the same time, you just need to just say, yeah, I don't do that. It's the only thing you can say, because otherwise it's a race to the bottom, and we can't.
Yeah,
I don't think we can.
Yeah.
It just goes back to education. I feel like the client just doesn't know. They're watching a commercial, a YouTube ad that says build your site, in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, they can click, set up a template, buy a domain, ensure they have a website, but like there's no SEO set up for that. There's no customization, there's graphics, there's no user workflows or user experience strategy. I mean, they're basically just going to have a non-indexed brochure website that they hand out on a business card. And that's what, is very common in our community, is just the education. I think I've seen several WordPress.com commercials in the last year. They're starting to spend money on that, but other than that, it's all online. So
yeah,
I think there are legitimate reasons for these services. Legitimate
absolutely.
needs for them. It's just that obviously we're within an industry where we create a bespoke solution, or we create a more custom solution, and we have skills that can go over and above, beyond what these kind of one hour, one click type services can offer.
absolutely. Let's take a question that came in from one of our attendees regarding mental paralysis. So
I relate to that.
Yeah, so this person says they get what they call mental paralysis, where they know they have the skills to do what is on their to-do list, and they know that they're able to do it, but whatever anxiety reason there is, they can't just make themselves do it. So what tips do you all have for getting out of that mental paralysis and back into productivity?
It's my daily struggle. I think it's maybe, I don't know, Michelle, I'm not sure, but for me, it's also to do with focus as well. But it depends on for me, it depends on the task at hand. Like, for instance, if I think, oh my God, I can't do this logo, what helps is to look at loads of other logos. And suddenly I think, oh, I can do that. So that's something. But I would say, I don't know what kind of task you were referring, Michelle. And to me, really, it depends on the task. But one thing that I have been embracing recently, and it's working really, really, really well. Instead of pushing and thinking that I have to spend 8, 9, 10, 12 hours chained to the desk and punishing myself if I haven't been productive and staying even longer, I'm now getting up and leaving and going out in the sun. Unlucky where I live, there's lots of sun. Or doing yoga for 10 minutes or cuddling my cats. So, one of the advantages of working from home is that I get the benefits of cats, that around me, and actually not push instead of pushing. And then I usually find that when I do get the task started, it gets much easier to then do it. But recently I've been having loads of focus issues. And there was a talk at WordCamp Valencia just this week, just on Saturday, by someone who's an expert in organizing and focus and things like that. And it was a brilliant talk. And so inspired by that, I used the Pomodoro technique, which is basically you set a timer for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. And And it worked. I mean, it worked so well. I mean, lately I was thinking, I need to get I need to get diagnosed. I think I've got ADHD. It's not possible, it's just impossible. And today I was like, oh, I need to get the timer on for longer than 25 minutes. It's just not enough. So I've had an amazing day. And I think that relates, Michelle, maybe it's not quite what you were saying, but to me, that works as well. So I would say, get up. Once it's done, you think, why did I persevere with that? It's just get out, do something else, and then get back to it. Get it started, set a timer, and then you're like, oh, that was easy. So that's what I do.
I find
I think that's all great advice there.
I find that I have no idea why it happens to me, but I have periods, so maybe a day, it may be an hour, it may be 6 days, I don't know, where some things just seem monstrously hard to achieve. The very same thing that I could achieve last week is insanely difficult and boring for me to do this week. I don't really have a handle on that. But what I would say is that I've noticed times of the day where I achieve more. And so for me, I tend to achieve more soon after waking up and getting started, and also when everybody's gone to bed. So the polar opposites of the day, that's periods of time where I get quite a lot done. But also, to Peach's point, I have also worked out that I'm far more effective if I just stop. If something is proving to be difficult, I don't set a timer, I don't think about it too much. I will just notice myself fidgeting and looking around and doing things which have nothing to do with what I ought to be doing. And I just flip the laptop lid down and go off and do something which I enjoy. So that could be a walk to the, in my case, freezing cold beach, or it could be, going and making a cup of coffee or having a phone conversation with a friend or anything. Mm-hmm. But just a period of time away with the understanding that, this is something that I'm doing in order to get me back. And then when I come back, have a different perspective. I'm feeling happier, cheerier, and that's definitely works for me.
Absolutely. Something that I do as well, and this is part of, I guess, working as a remote team and not just a solo business owner, but I'll actually schedule a meeting, right? So I'm having trouble working on something. Let's say I know I need to get it done, but so then I'll schedule a meeting with someone on my team to get feedback on it. So I know I need to get something done for that meeting. So that way I'm creating some accountability there, I guess.
Yeah. That's essential.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have, as Nathan said, we have periods in the day when we are much more productive, and spending some time recognizing that is really beneficial, because a lot of us choose to have a more flexible working environment, and it enables us to be more flexible when we do work, when we do and don't work. And if we need to take an hour mid-morning because we're just not being productive, that's just not a productive time for us, then take it. You use that time and recognize that if, for me personally, I'm similar to Nathan. I'm very early in the morning and very late at night at my most productive times. And I intentionally, around 9 a.m., take my dog out for a walk for an hour. So that's 9 till 10 a.m., which for a lot of people is a really productive time. A lot of people are just starting work. But for me, it's a completely unproductive time for me. So there's no point in me trying to force the issue. I might as well take that time to go and clear my head and have that time to process things.
And what a pleasure to have that capability. A lot of people are, you've got to be there at 8:30 and you can leave at 5:30, and to embrace that and acknowledge that, I'm at the beach. This is slightly unusual. A lot of people don't have this. How lucky am I?
It's amazing.
That's quite a nice recognition, isn't it? Sometimes I think, to realize that you could be not in that position. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's I just make sure, obviously, we again setting expectations for the team, setting expectations for clients, and if people are aware of that, and I'm between 9 and 10, you're not going to get hold of me. But it means that I'm then much more productive outside of that that time.
Yeah. We had one more question come in, and we're trying to keep this to an hour, so we'll tackle this one real quickly, I think. But what are your thoughts on creating public calendars with time blocking to help manage client expectations. This way you're following a daily routine, using a scheduling app, for example, blocking out your lunch hour, right? So no one's scheduling on top of that, blocking out your morning walk with your dog, things like that.
Yeah, I love this. I do. This is how I lead my life. Somebody wrote somewhere recently I can't remember where, in a Facebook group or something. I think it might have been Carrie Dills on Twitter. If it isn't in the calendar, it's not real.
happening.
Or something along those lines. And I very much subscribe to that. So I've got everything organized with Google Calendar. Caveat emptor, make sure you set it up right, because if you set it up wrong and the calendars don't sync, as Dan can probably say, you get booked in twice when the automation process was there to stifle that from happening. But yeah, that works for me so well. I have farmed my life out to SaaS apps and Google Calendar, and I like it. It works very well. And I just go in and I have one calendar called Timeout, which if I want to do anything, if I want to just set a time, I just, this day or these 4 hours or whatever, just put Timeout in and it just blocks it off. So that works really well for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to keep your day organized, keep giving yourself some sanity and all of that. And another thing somebody mentioned is simplifying. So I think everybody agrees that the simpler you can make your life, the better off you are, right? So do you all have tips on this? Or what are some things you do to keep your life simple?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I get it. I'm not sure if it's the right place to mention this, but maybe it is. I think that meditation is something that helps hugely. I mean, before we wrap up, we need to mention it anyway, because it's kind of changed my life. But I do find that it keeps things simple. And in fact, it's another strategy when you feel overwhelmed. You just go, you know what, I'm just going to think about nothing now for 15 minutes. And to me, that is a way that simplifies situations a lot. And also something else that I suggest is, when you meditate, it's your time. You can do anything you want with it. And one thing that I love doing is just imagining the absolutely best scenario, just thinking, it's so great. This client has given you problems. You just imagine that they're being wonderful to you and just great, and they give you loads of money. And why not? And when you finish, you just feel so much better. But however, when things feel complex, I feel that meditating does help keeping things simple.
Absolutely, gives you some perspective and some distance from the situation. Yeah. For me, I think my meditation is running. And yeah, maybe I'm not sitting there not thinking, but when I'm running, because I like to go for longer runs, it lets you get into that mind frame of the good stuff kind of going up to the top, right? I think meditation is hugely important, whether you do it by way of sitting in a quiet place or something physical or whatever it is for you. It's important that you make time for that, for sure.
Absolutely. I think from the business perspective, in terms of simplifying things, it's a case of focus on what you are specialists at. Don't try and take on every single possible role that you can. Our agency, we're not SEO experts, and we're not support and maintenance. We don't, we partner with other businesses within our space that specialize in those areas. So we get focused on what we're good at, and it means that we're simplifying our entire workflow and simplifying our process internally.
Yeah, and I think when you're working on a project or something and it all of a sudden is too complicated and you can feel it and you know it's not working, things aren't working out, that's when it's time to take a step back. And I know I've worked, Peach, I'm sure you're aware with all of your UX experience, when something's not working, it's time to start over, right? You need to figure out what's the simplest way to get to the objective that you're trying to get
to. Always the simplest way, yeah. Not that it's easy to find it, but yeah.
Right, not that it's easy, exactly. Okay, so we're down to a few minutes left, so maybe we can take this time for each of you. I know, Picha, you had it on your mind to talk about meditation, so I'm glad we were able to get that in there. And I don't want to have missed out on any of the other really important topics that you guys maybe wanted to address. So Dan, is there anything else you'd like to add for everyone today?
I think the only thing, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just giving a little mention to is the Never Give Up campaign that we're running at the moment within WP&UP.
Definitely.
It's something that we've through the month of October we're sharing the message about never give up. Now, I'm not saying it's always right to never give up. There are situations and times where it is right, but equally there are also times when it's right to continue. And WP&UP is in a situation that does need support, does need the community's support for us to be able to deliver support to the community. So I just wanted to give a quick mention to that. We're hoping to hit a fundraising goal of £20,000 through the month of October. We're currently at about 62% of that goal at the moment. So it'd be great to have a bit of a push to try and accomplish that fundraising goal.
What's the URL for that, Dan?
WP&UP.org/never give up.
That's an easy to remember one. Very good.
Well,
And Nathan or Alex, is there anything else that you all would like to add? Or Pecha, if there's anything else from you as well.
I'm just going to say quickly, just physical exercise. I mean, I do yoga in the home and cycling and skating or swimming in the summer outside the home. Do it, get out, endorphins, be in nature, move.
Get on a bike.
Yeah.
Come and cycle across
Get on
Europe
a
with us.
bike. Get on a bike. Yeah.
Nathan's got his bike there.
Well, yeah, on that note, actually, I may as well mention this. Speaking of getting out and trying to never give up, a few of us at WP&UP have decided to do something called, well, the project is called Head2. It's called head2.org. You can go to that website and you'll find out about a bike ride, which we are undertaking next May. And a few of us are cycling from Berlin to Portugal, which is 3,000 kilometers, just under 2,000 miles. And none of us are in any way, shape or form prepared for this. But we're becoming prepared, making minor adjustments in our own lives over a period of time. And that's the message about this one. You know, quite dramatic things can be achieved if you put your mind to it and you know, commit. So we are committed to doing this, and yeah, so there you go. That's what I'd like to mention.
That's incredible. I'm excited to follow along on that as well. Alex, anything from you?
Yeah, just I feel like we have such a great resource to provide that's free, and just to let everyone on the webinar and just who watch this later that you don't have to pay anything. And so there's nothing literally to lose. And this isn't a sales pitch. It's we, and Dan has created this, his vision. It's a reality. So if you're struggling with anything, just pop into Slack or go to WP&UP.org and just get a hold of someone via email, chat, or even call in, and just we'll help you where we can. So that's about it.
Yeah, I think definitely if you're on this, watching this, then go check out WP&UP. They're doing amazing things, and it's not just you know, mental therapy kind of things. It's business help and all kinds of different stuff. So there's a lot of resources there. I will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone with links to all of this, so you can be reminded of that. And yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for coming together and being on this panel. I had a really great time. I think you all have really amazing perspectives that are, you know, founded in experience, and that's great to be able to tap into. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you to everyone who is attending. So it's great that you're here. And yeah, that's it. So have a great rest of your day. And just so you all know, when we hang up, it's sayonara to everybody. So thank you so much. And it was
Emily.
great seeing you all.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.